Good morning, everybody. So my name is Andres from the Baking Steel Test Kitchen. We are live. Today we are talking about, we get a lot of questions on this, the baking steel, how to clean it and maintain it so it lasts forever. And it can do that too because it's made out of steel, which is 99% iron, and it is just built to last. It's super heavy duty, and that's why we love it. And there's a lot of things you can do with this. You know, we recommend leaving it in the oven, leaving it on your stovetop if you have the griddle. And it's going to last forever, but it does need some TLC. Just like your favorite cast iron pan, it does require some maintenance. And so we got to be careful. We can't just set it and forget it. A lot of us are now, because it's summer and it's hot, we're bringing it outside. And I've had a few people, leave it out there, and that's a no-no because it's steel and it's tough, but the elements will damage it. And that means like the moisture, rust, condensation, even if it doesn't rain out, it's still trapping some moisture inside, which is not favorable to cast iron or steel. So gotta be careful, even inside the oven. Some non-electric ovens, those two seem to be ideal and dry all the time, but gas ovens can create some moisture when you fire those things up. They're attached to hoses that go outside. Sometimes moisture comes back in. So it does need some TLC. So let's go over that today, all right? And we're gonna do questions and answers throughout, so please fire away at any time. And Craig is here with us. He can help us. He can pause me if needed, and we can jump into answering your questions, because this is gonna be about you guys and how to make your steels last forever, okay? I'm gonna take you through my process first, what I do to maintain my steel. And then we'll get into some cleaning techniques and actually seasoning as well, which is important. And we've come a long way since we started too, about how we do this. But typically, here's a baking steel right here. Boom. You can see this has been after a few uses. Typically what I do is, my rule of thumb is I remove my steels the next day. Outside is different, but let's say we're inside in a home environment and I had a pizza class or pizza session last night. I wait until the next day to remove it. Because what I'm gonna do is take it out and I'm gonna clean it. And essentially what I do is I take my steel and I grab some paper towels and I bring it to the sink, and I'll show you guys. I kind of just brush it off. And I use soap and water and a sponge. If I want to use a bench scraper, let me just grab another one here. If anything gets tough, if I get some cheese buildup or something, I'm going to literally just scrape everything clean, then soap and water, and then real important that I take a paper towel and I dry it next. That's really important, okay, to keep this thing dry. And if we do these things, it's gonna last forever. So even the out of box, same thing applies. Just wipe it down with a paper towel, put it in your oven, preheat it for an hour, and then you're good to go. So for cleaning it, I just clean this thing, and you can see now, I take a paper towel to it, nothing's coming off. That's really important. Okay, so I want to keep this, it's like my baby, keep it super clean all the time. What I like to do the first few times I get my steel, I like to keep it well oiled. And think of oiling it and seasoning it as a force field. We want to protects it from the elements forever. And one way of doing that is to season it. So it's already been seasoned. What I like to do, again, the first couple of times I use it just to develop the force field, is I take some oil. And I'll show you guys how I do this. So now my steel is clean, it's dry. And you can see it's got some different spots on it. That's one is from maybe some oil spilled on it or cheese or even sauce, but it's still clean. This steel is gonna get darker and darker the more I use it, eventually becoming almost like black. And I'll get to my griddle here in a second, but and the more I oil it, the darker it gets also. So it's gonna be uneven in the beginning, kind of like this one, but as I season it and use it, it'll become darker and darker. But I wanna show you how I actually oil my steel. And I'll pause there because there's a bunch of different oils. I lately have been not using avocado oil because I haven't. I ran out of flaxseed oil, which I also love. Avocado oil, coconut oil seem to be really good oils. Even canola oil, which is almost everyone has canola oil. It's like a vegetable oil at home. That works great as well. My mom actually uses olive oil. I've seen her use olive oil on her steel for the same reason. That also works. But the amount of oil is really minimal. If you can watch here, I'm gonna pour just a small like dollop, right? You guys can see it close up. Can you see that, Chef? Pretty good. That's probably the size of a 50-cent piece. Next what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna literally just paint this oil on the entire surface. I don't know if you can see me painting it, but you can see it's dry over here. I'm gonna do both sides of the steel. Once I paint it on there, just like that, I'm gonna take another paper towel and literally try to almost take it off. So I'm really just polishing it with oil. And I really want just a really, really thin layer of oil on there. I'll do this oiling to both sides of my steel. And now what I'm gonna do is just take this steel and place it back in my oven. Just like this, place it back in. And next time I fire up my oven, it's gonna start to bake it on. I could just fire my oven up now and bake it on, but I'm going out in a little bit, so I don't wanna leave my ovens on, so I'm just gonna leave it in there oiled. That's perfectly fine, because that's gonna create like a nice force field, if you will. When I bake it, it's gonna kind of really, really adhere to it a little bit better. But for now, oiling your pans after you clean them is perfectly fine. It's gonna give it a nice finish on your steel, and it's gonna protect it from the elements. If you do that every time, or especially in the first few months, that steel is gonna have such a great force field on it, it's gonna last forever. And then now it cleans easier, it'll become darker, etc. That makes sense? Any questions so far? Always keep the logo side up. We want to see that baking steel. But in actuality, it does not matter. No, both sides are treated, they're basically the same. One side has the logo, one side does not. We just like to look at the logo.
Does the oil smoke temperature matter?
It can, yeah. I tried with the oils I mentioned seem to be really good oils around 400 degrees. I think their smoke point, we're getting just beyond their smoke point, and that seems to be a nice temperature. And you'll notice a little bit of a scent when I burn these off for an hour, but once that initial smoke is gone, there'll be no more. So in other words, we've already smoked these off for you guys, so when you put them in your oven, they will not have any kind of scent. New. Just keep it well cleaned and maintained. Usually an hour. An hour is fine.
Do you need to do it each time you use it?
No, you do not. It's a good habit to get into to keep it oiled and protected, especially the first few times you use it. In these electric ovens, to be honest, I very seldom will season my steels because it's really a really dry environment that doesn't really require any maintenance. I keep them clean, but I don't really oil them that often. Gas ovens are a little different. I need to keep my gas oven steels probably better oiled than my electric ovens because of the moisture factor in gas ovens. What else do we have?
Can you heat it up on the stove
Um, yeah, but I'm not sure. I guess you could. I don't think I would recommend that. Um, the griddles, which we're going to talk about next, maybe you could do it that way. I've done that with my griddle a few times, but for actual seasoning it, I think it's better in an enclosed environment. I don't really know that exact answer.
Talk about rust under seals.
Okay, that's a good point. Let's talk about rust a little bit because sometimes we forget or we spilled a little tomato sauce and some acid seeps through the seasoning, which can happen with tomatoes because of the acid level. Then we might have a little rust spot. What can we do if that happens? Or we leave it outside for 2 or 3 days and we forgot about it. What can we do to revive these things? And it can be done, not a problem. Let's pretend that I've got my skinny griddle here. I've got some, let's pretend like maybe I got a little rust on it. What can I do? That's when really my favorite product, like let's say I took soap and water to this steel already and I still can't get it off. Like, what do? These Earthstone cleaning bricks are like my best friend for my steels and my griddles. They wear out, so you got to be careful, but they work amazingly well. In fact, when I was in restaurants, I remember in high school on the diners, those little breakfast griddles, we used a version of these. I think they were all black and they had chemicals in them. I remember them smelling really bad, but we used to use them to clean our griddles at the end of our shift just to keep it nice and smooth. These are an earth-friendly version of that same thing. So if I've got something sticky on here, I'm gonna literally just take my Earthstone. You can see I got a little friction here. I'm just gonna smooth it out. So it went from like a sticky surface to almost a smooth surface now. And that's when this thing comes in really handy. But if it's rust, this is not gonna get to the rust. There's a product called Barkeeper's Friend. This is a liquid form. My cleaning lady actually cleaned one of my Le Creuset pans in my home 3 or 4 years ago, and it was really black inside. And I remember coming home and looking at it, and it was like all white inside again, like that ceramic. I'm like, how did she do that? And she used Barkeeper's Friend. So we started using it on our baking steels for rust, and it really works wonders. It's a chemical, so I don't like to use it unless I have to. But let's say, hypothetically, I left my steel out on the grill overnight and it rained out and I got some surface rust. That is when I will follow the directions on this bottle and clean my steel. And more than not, it's gonna probably take some of the seasoning off too, but this really does an incredible job of cleaning my the rust off. After I use this, I then will use my Earthstone, and then I'll use soap and water to clean it. And again, every time I clean my steel, I want to be able to wipe and get nothing on my paper towel, right? That's really important. If I'm getting stuff off like oil or something, I got to do a better job of cleaning it. And that is good practice. And then if you continue that again, the steel is going to last forever. Does that answer that question? That was long-winded.
Yes.
Good, awesome. And we'll link up, we're gonna follow up either in email or on Facebook with, maybe we'll do our email chef, our class follow-up email with all these products on it that show, how to keep your steel lasting forever. Because it's really important, but a little TLC. I like to, so I'll put my griddle on top of my stove. I might wipe a little bit of oil on it after I clean it, just to protect it. It's beautiful. Give it a little force field. So that oil is kind of wet on there, but a really, really thin layer, and it's always gonna be good to go. What else do we have for questions, guys?
Can you repeat the question that I tell you?
Yes.
Do you season both sides or just one side?
Good question. So for my baking steel that goes in my oven, I season both sides because why not? That way they're always going to be available to me. I have left one in my ovens before and I only treated one side while the other side maybe doesn't stay as clean. So just treat both sides equally. And that way you always have, double-sided steel available. On the griddle, ironically, I don't do a lot of seasoning on the backside of my griddle. And it's in really great shape. My griddle always stays on my stovetop. I very seldom will use this in the oven because I've already got steels in my oven. So on top of my stove, the griddle's always in a really dry environment. So it stays in great shape and it's always beautiful. Always. Hope that answers that.
SOS pad.
Yeah, great. That's a great tool. Instead of, if I can't find Barkeeper's Friend, SOS pad will also take down some tough grime that might get stuck on your steel or some of the fat that gets kind of oiled on there. That'll definitely help smooth it out as well. I don't think it works as good as a cleaning brick, but a really good alternative. Don't worry about scratching your steel. You might see little scratches. Typically what those scratches are, you're just kind of scratching the seasoning a little bit, but it doesn't really hurt anything.
How do you store the steel if not in the oven?
Great question. I like our storage sleeves. Let me see if I can pull it up here. These things are awesome. Like this is our storage sleeve, which is like a briefcase, like a laptop case for your computer, but your steel sits in there. We have one for every size steel that we have. I like it because I can travel with it. So if anybody, by the way, no one's invited me over to make pizza. If you did, I would bring my steels in my case. I travel with my case because one, it's easier, but two, it's just a nice thing to do carry your steel. And it keeps your steel protected. By the way, it protects your other pans because chances are the steel is gonna crush anything that it comes in contact with. Like, so you don't wanna destroy your nice all-clad pans with your baking steel. It's a tough cookie. What else we have? Coffee, anyone?
Temperature to bake your steel, season it?
I typically use 400 degrees, works well with flax oil, coconut oil, canola oil. 400 degrees seems to be, I think, grapeseed oil too. That is a higher smoke point, I think. Basically look up the smoke point and just go right above what that smoke point is, just so it kind of seems to help. Anybody else? Anybody else have any seasoning or cleaning questions? How is your steels holding up, anybody?
The Earthstone, are there different variations?
Yes, great question. So these are, I usually get mine on Amazon and I'm running low. There's actually a couple of competing products like them that are actually very good. We'll link to those. I think you just can't get the Earthstones on Amazon right now. What I typically do on Amazon, if I don't know a brand, I'll just read the reviews and hopefully if I get a good vibe from the reviews, I'll try them out, typically. And we've found a couple like that. And by the way, if you go to Home Depot, you might find these there inside.
Top 3 or 4 things you bake regularly on your steel.
Top 3 or 4. Okay, pizza, number 1 on my baking steel. Pizza for sure. Number 2 for me is bread. I use a lot of ciabatta bread. My kids love it. I've always got dough in the fridge. That's number 2. Number 3 would be, I would say, vegetables, like roasted vegetables on a sheet tray. So I will do like a typical sheet tray. In fact, my ovens are usually on inside. My wife at dinner time will say, hey, can you roast some broccoli for me or potatoes? And I'll put my roasted vegetables on my sheet tray and place it right on top of my steel. And what I'm doing is I'm getting the benefit of this heat from the steel to blast right into the sheet tray. or whatever else is on top. And it makes them cook more evenly than if I didn't use a steel. And faster too, by the way. So that's 3. And then, fourth, I'd say frozen pizza might be something that we do in here. My kids like a product called Amy's Frozen Pizza, and it's really good. So I've done that. What else? Well, chef, what else do you guys cook on yours? That's 4, by the way.
Yeah, I would say like
Like preheating
preheating or cooking other things on top of it.
or reheating pizza, by the way, is awesome on a steel. So you've already got your pizza made. It doesn't need to preheat for an hour, but like it just adds another layer of texture to the crust, which is awesome. Do a lot of pies, slab pies, cookies directly on the steel. It really makes whatever you make at your house, it really makes everything better because it's just essentially a rack in your oven that stores that energy. So it's centrally located inside your oven, and it just blasts even heat into everything that goes on top. So that's why mine are always permanently in my ovens.
We read a lot about washing cast iron pans and things with soap and water hurting the seasoning. What's the deal?
I think, ironically, we did the same. When I first came out with the steel, we said no soap and water because that's what cast iron was saying, no soap and water. So I was like, oh, they know what they're doing. So, but then as we got more comfortable using our product, I clean mine every single day. I use soap and water. And I think you can do the same thing with cast iron. I don't know why they would, I don't know what the reasoning was behind it. Maybe it eats away at the seasoning a little bit, but as long as you dry it fast, I think it's fine.
Can you use parchment on your steel?
Ooh, yes. Great question. Parchment is great on the steel, especially for cookies, breads, things that are tougher to launch on and off. Like place the whole sheet of parchment paper is super easy on a steel. The only caution I have is when I am using the broiler. You do not want to have parchment paper inside your oven with the broiler because then it'll burn. It'll start a fire. I know that from experience. So be careful with broilers. Other than that, though, it works on the steel, no problems.
Can you use the baking steel on an induction cooktop to conduct heat to non-induction pans?
Great point. Yes. In fact, you can if anybody has experience with induction cooking, you'll take your favorite, let's say this is like a Teflon pan, and I place it on my induction burner, and I'm sauteing onions, and I pick up my pan to kind of flip my onions like this. That induction burner turns itself off. And I learned that the hard way a few times. So even when I place my pan back on, my induction burner is off. And if I go off and have a conversation, I come back and my onions are raw. I'm like, what the heck happened? Well, the baking steel can sit, if you put the steel right on your oven, it's gonna be on. This steel eventually is gonna get to the temperature that you want. Then you can place your favorite egg pan on top of the steel, and you're gonna get the benefit of the steel from the heat from the steel into your pan. And now you almost have like a French cooktop on your induction. So I could stick this teapot on there too. I could place my pan on here. I could place, let me grab another pan. I can grab a third pan and place it. I'm gonna shift these around so you can see. Now I've got like essentially 3 pots on one French cooktop on my induction instead of just the 2 burners. So essentially it gives you more surface area to cook. That help? Kind of fun. What else do we have? The baking steel, I typically say the next day. When I go do an event somewhere and I have steels there, to fast track that, I will just open the oven up to let air flow in, and it seems to cool it down a lot faster with some fresh air coming through. Even when I do that, I wait 45 minutes before I try to remove them, unless I bring welding gloves. then I'm okay. But typically open the oven up, let it cool. After about an hour, using some oven mitts, I can remove that pretty quick, safely. But I do not want to touch it when it's hot, ever. I know that from experience too.
Self-cleaning mode and or steam function on oven, does it hurt it?
So steam is fine. Just remember, take it out afterwards and dry it off. Usually it's going to dry itself off. And just keep that steel, keep the force field alive on that steel, and that will not hurt it. Self-cleaning mode, my caution is make sure you don't have an oven with, like this oven has these racks, you can see slide out. Those racks actually have ball bearings that helps it slide. So those need to be removed from the oven in the self-cleaning. Otherwise, all that natural oil that's on those ball bearings gets dried up and I won't have that slide feature anymore. So I always take everything out of my oven when I do my self-cleaning. Now, if you don't have those, you just have regular racks, yeah, leave your steel in, that's fine. But remember, at that high of a heat, you're burning off the seasoning. So it still needs to be cleaned afterwards with soap and water, then do the oil, season it up again. In other words, you're starting fresh, a nice piece of steel, but just, again, keep it clean, keep it oiled after that.
That's good.
You guys are great. Anybody else making some pizza this weekend? I hope. Oh, but smash burgers are amazing. And that's something, yeah, in fact, someone emailed us this morning. They were setting their fire alarms off. Just be sure to take those batteries out. If you do that, put them back in, or do your smash burgers outside. They're fun. Awesome, you guys. So we will follow up to everyone with another email with the video of this, and then links to all the products that we talked about for cleaning and things. Yeah, and start those doughs up for the weekend. It's Wednesday. In fact, I'm making dough today for the weekend too, because it's a good day to start it. Great day to start your dough. Awesome, you guys. Thank you. You guys rock it. We'll see you guys soon. Bye now.